Good morning. Today we are going to talk about intellectual freedom and why it is important to you. To start the lesson, we're going to read a story. Some of you might have already read this one before. It is called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Okay? Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his favorite hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. One rainy Saturday during vacation, he found quite an extraordinary one. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain fell cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. To his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop gradually as rains usually do. It ceased. The drops vanished on the way down, the clouds disappeared, everything was dry, and the sun was shining as if the rain had never existed. In all his young life, Sylvester had never had a wish gratified so quickly. It struck him that magic must be at work. And he guessed that magic must be in the remarkable-looking red pebble, where it was indeed. To make a test, he put the pebble on the ground and said, "I wish it would rain again." Nothing happened. But when he said the same thing holding the pebble in his hoof, the sky turned black. There was lightning, a cloud of thunder, and the rain came shooting down. "What a lucky day this is," thought Sylvester. "From now on, I can have anything I want. My father and mother can have anything they want. My relatives, my friends, and anybody at all can have anything they want." He wished the sunshine back into the sky, and he wished a wart on his left hind fetlock would disappear, and it did, and he started home eager to amaze his father and mother with the pebble. He could hardly wait to see their faces. Maybe they wouldn't even believe him at first. It'd be kind of cool to have a rock that would make all your wishes come true, wouldn't it? As he was crossing Strawberry Hill, thinking of some of the many, many things he could wish for, he was startled to see a mean, hungry lion looking right at him from behind some tall grass. He was frightened. If he hadn't been so frightened, he could have made the lion disappear, or he could have wished himself safe at home with his mother and father. He could have wished the lion would turn into a butterfly or a daisy or a gnat. He could have wished many things, but he panicked and couldn't think carefully. "I wish I were a rock," he said, and he became a rock. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around it, and went away confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. "I saw that little donkey as clear as day. Maybe I'm going crazy," he muttered. And there was Sylvester, a rock on Strawberry Hill, with the magic pebble lying right beside him on the ground, and he was unable to pick it up. "Oh, how I wish I were myself again," he thought, but nothing happened. He had to be touching the pebble to make the magic work, and there was nothing he could do about it. His thoughts began to race like mad. He was scared and worried. Being helpless, he felt hopeless. He imagined all possibilities and eventually realized that his only chance of becoming himself again was for someone to find the red pebble and to wish that the rock next to it would be a donkey. Someone would surely find the red pebble. It was so bright and shiny. But who on earth would make a wish that a rock would become a donkey? The chance was 1 in a billion at best. Sylvester fell asleep. What else could he do? Night came with many stars. Meanwhile, back at home, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan paced the floor frantic with worry. Sylvester had never come home later than dinner time. Where could he be? They stayed up all night wondering what had happened, expecting that Sylvester would surely turn up by morning. But he didn't, of course. Mrs. Duncan cried a lot, and Mr. Duncan did his best to soothe her. Both longed to have their dear son with them. "I will never scold Sylvester again as long as I live," said Mrs. Duncan, "no matter what he does." At dawn, they went about inquiring of all the neighbors. They talked to all the children, the puppies, the kittens, the colts, the piglets. No one had seen Sylvester since the day before. They went to the police. The police could not find their child. All of the dogs in Oakdale went searching for him. They sniffed behind every rock and tree and grass blade, into every nook and gully of the neighborhood and beyond, but found not a scent of him. They sniffed the rock on Strawberry Hill, but it smelled like a rock. It didn't smell like Sylvester. After a month of searching the same places over and over again and inquiring of the same animals over and over again, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan no longer knew what to do. They concluded that something dreadful must have happened and that they would probably never see their son again, though all the time he was less than a mile away. They tried their best to be happy, to go about their usual ways, but their usual ways included Sylvester, and they were always reminded of him. They were miserable. Life had no meaning for them anymore. Night followed day, and day followed night, over and over again. Sylvester on the hill woke up less and less often. When he was awake, he was only hopeless and unhappy. He felt he would be a rock forever, and he tried to get used to it. He went into an endless sleep. The days grew colder. Fall came with the leaves changing color. The leaves fell, and the grass bent to the ground. Then it was winter. The winds blew this way and that. It snowed. Mostly the animals stayed indoors, living on the food they had stored up. One day a wolf sat on the rock that was Sylvester and howled because he was hungry. Then the snow melted, the earth warmed up in the spring sun, and things budded. Leaves were on the trees again. Flowers showed their young faces. One day in May, Mr. Duncan insisted that his wife go with him on a picnic. Let's cheer up, he said. Let's try to live again and be happy, even though Sylvester, our angel, is no longer with us. They went to Strawberry Hill. Mrs. Duncan sat down on the rock. The warmth of his own mother sitting on him woke Sylvester up from his deep winter sleep. How he wanted to shout, "Mother, Father, it's me, Sylvester, I'm right here." But he couldn't talk. He had no voice. He was stone dumb. Mr. Duncan walked aimlessly about while Mrs. Duncan set out the picnic food on the rock: alfalfa sandwiches, pickled oats, sassafras salad, timothy compote. Suddenly, Mr. Duncan saw the red pebble. "What a fantastic pebble!" he exclaimed. Sylvester would have loved it for his collection. He put the pebble on the rock. They sat down to eat. Sylvester was now wide awake as a donkey that was a rock could possibly be. Mrs. Duncan felt some mysterious excitement. "You know, Father," she said suddenly, "I have a strange feeling that our dear Sylvester is still alive and not far away." I am, Sylvester wanted to shout, but he couldn't. If only he had realized that the pebble resting on his back was the magic pebble. "Oh, how I wish you were here with us on this lovely May day," said Mrs. Duncan. Mr. Duncan looked sadly at the ground. "Don't you wish it too, Father?" she said. He looked at her as if to say, "How could you ask such a question?" And Mr. and Mrs. Duncan looked at each other with great sorrow. "I wish I were myself again. I wish I were my real self again," thought Sylvester. And in less than an instant, he was. You can imagine the scene that followed: the embraces, the kisses, the questions, the answers, the loving looks, and the fond exclamations. When they eventually calmed down a bit and had gotten home, Mr. Duncan put the magic pebble in an iron safe. Someday they might use it, but for now, what more could they wish for? They had all they had ever wanted. It's a cute little book, isn't it? So, what did you think of the book?
Cute.
It's a cute little book.
I want to be a rock.
What? You want to be a rock? You would want to be a rock. So what would you think if I had told you that you were not allowed to read this book?
I would be very upset.
I would be
Why would you be confused?
Because to me,
Let her talk.
to me, it's just a very good book for kids to read, and I don't think that kids should not be allowed to read books.
What about this there, Clayton?
It's a fictional book that's like a children's book, except it kind of talks like if it were an adult book with the choice of words, and it's kind of enjoyable whenever you read it because it's a picture book, as you can see sometimes, but it kind of takes a turn with magic when it shows that the pebble is magical.
It does have magic.
And it pulls you into the story.
Pulls you into the story. So it's an exciting book, and you like it. And for many years, and in some places still today, you can't read this book. They're not allowed to have it in the library. This is one of the books that have been banned. And that is what we're discussing today, the intellectual freedom. We believe as librarians that you have the right to read these books if you want to. So why do you suppose that this book, now that I've read it to you, was banned? Why do you think that people have thought not to allow children to read this book? Catherine?
Because the police are depicted as pigs.
The police were depicted as pigs. That's definitely one of them, because that is considered an insult when you call a police officer a pig. Clayton?
I think it was because, like, how the donkey had turned into a rock. Maybe they didn't want kids thinking, like, how small kids, whenever they read books like that, they don't know if it's fiction or nonfiction.
So maybe it was confusing to kids. That would be definitely part of it, Dakota.
Depression.
It was kind of sad. It's a sad little book. I mean, mom and dad are like, where's my kid? And they're really sad, and he's sad, and he goes into that deep sleep, which is a sign of depression sometimes.
I feel like it portrays more realistic parts of life that some parents might want to shelter their kids from because it could scare them,
Okay.
like children.
And see, you bring up an interesting point. You're saying your parents might not want you to read it. And if your parents say, you know, I don't think that this book is appropriate for you right now, that is your parents' right as your parent. But if you go into a school library, you should be able to pull the book, take it home, and your parents should be the ones to say, I don't think that's right for you, please take that back. And instead what we have happening is parents will get upset and they'll come to the school and demand that these books are taken off the shelf so that nobody can read them, even though you said before it's an enjoyable picture story, which is clearly fiction. Okay? So we're going to look more into what intellectual freedom is as soon as I wake up the computer. It went to sleep. On your table, I've handed you guys a worksheet that you can take notes on as we go through the PowerPoint or the presentation. And feel free to write down any notes or questions that you have, and we'll see what we can do towards the end. Okay? So it says intellectual freedom. What does it mean to you? So what does intellectual freedom mean to you? So if I say, what is intellectual freedom, Tara? What would you think that means?
The freedom to read any type of book.
The freedom to read any type of book. Catherine?
Freedom to think what you want.
The freedom to think what you want. That's a very important one also.
I feel like it's the freedom to learn.
The freedom to learn. Who has the right to tell you what you can and cannot learn?
The freedom to learn what you want to learn. Like, if someone tries and takes, say, a book about some animal, you should be able to learn about that animal without anyone else. Like,
That's right. Yeah, I understand. Maybe that book has some things in there they don't want you necessarily to know yet at a younger age, and so your parents say you can't read it. I understand. All right. It says, what is intellectual freedom? Okay. The dictionary defines intellectual freedom as a freedom that allows people to think about or study what they want. So pretty much what you all said. The ALA, which is the American Library Association, believes that it is a natural right that we're all born with. I've kind of covered this. It says every person has the right to see, read, and hear all sides of an issue before making a decision about what is best for us. So rather than me coming in and saying you're not allowed to read this book, you should be able to know why was it banned, what are the pros, what are the cons, and make the decision that is best for you, or with your family make the decision what's best for you versus somebody else coming in and telling you. And so what does it mean for kids? Well, do kids have the same rights as adults?
no.
Well, you have some of the same rights. You do have the right to read it, but it is tempered.
I feel like we have the same rights, but different privileges.
Oh, I like that. Same rights, different privileges. Because obviously there are some things you cannot do, but you do have the same basic rights. And it says, should an adult other than your parents be able to tell you that you cannot read a book or you cannot watch a movie or a show on TV? Really, your parents have that right, but nobody else should be able to have that right. They might advise against it, but to not give it to you because they don't think it's fitting for you is not okay. And it says, how would you make it feel if someone told you you were not allowed to read a book that you were interested in? So if you saw the book on the shelf and you were interested in it, and I said, no, you can't have that one. How would that make you feel?
I would need a reason.
You would want a reason, Clayton?
Like how Dakota said, you need a reason because you can't just tell someone no, you can't do that because you have to have a reason to know why you can't do that.
So what if I said, well, I don't think that book's appropriate for you? Would that be a good enough reason?
No, because then
Because some people, they have different levels.
some people
Different levels of maturity, different levels of, I got you.
It'd be disappointing.
You'd be disappointed. Wouldn't I would feel sad. What if it was one of your favorite books? What if it's a book that you really, really like and you've read it 100 times before,
then I would
but all of a sudden we started pulling them off the library shelves because somebody complained and said it wasn't suitable for children?
I'd be upset.
I think you're going to be surprised in a minute about some of the books that have been banned in different areas, banned or challenged or protested in some way.
Charlie Brown.
Because there's a lot. I was doing this project and coming up with this lesson for y'all. I was really shocked about some of the books that were banned at one point. So it says, how does this impact you in your school? Many people assume children have no rights and that they should be told what to read and what not to read. While your parents certainly have that right, like we've discussed, while you live with them, school librarians don't. Our job as librarians is to ensure that you have access to a wide variety of materials. And while we might not be able to meet every demand that you want due to budgets and other constraints, we certainly try to make sure that we have what you are interested in reading and taking on. So if you want to learn more about intellectual freedom, there are some books that have been written about it. Here are some of the books that have been listed. Oops. I went too far. Oh no, it's not showing up. Where'd it go? Okay, well, I can tell you which one this is. This is the land. This is called The Memoirs of a Book Bat. Apparently, I've hidden the title. I'm sorry about that. It says 14-year-old Harper is an avid reader of fantasy who must hide her books from her parents, comes to realize that the promotion of censorship threatens her freedom to make her own choices. So her parents don't like her reading fantasy books, and so this book goes about her realizing that they're threatening her freedom to make choices. And so rather than hiding them, maybe she should discuss it with her parents. But they go on to talk about that a little bit in that book. And then this one is called The Book Thief. And it's about a young girl living in Nazi Germany that discovers the joy of reading and develops such a love for the books that she steals them from book burnings. Because back before they would just simply tell us not to stock the shelves, they would burn books to prevent people from being able to read them. So she would go in, and it's about a girl going in and stealing the books so that she would be able to read them. This one is a nonfiction book. It is called A Kid's Guide to the America's Bill of Rights, Curfew, Censorship, and the 100-Pound Giant. And it examines the Bill of Rights. It tells you what the basic Bill of Rights is in a kid-friendly way so that you can understand. And it's a great introduction to the basic rights that you have in this country. And then here is the website. It's www.ala.org. It is, the American Library Association has a big section there for you that you can explore and find out more information. And so now we're going to go to some of the books that have been banned and challenged. And I want you to kind of think about why you think they were banned and how you feel about the fact that they were banned. Okay, and we'll talk at the end about them. The Harry Potter series. Right. I knew that one would get y'all. The Harry Potter series. Well, we'll talk about it at the end. The Harry Potter series is one that for a while people were trying to pull off the shelves and they thought it was inappropriate to children. And Tango Makes Three is a story about the two little boy penguins and their little baby penguin that they're raising, that they try to pull off the shelf. A Bridge to Terabithia, which has become a movie too, I believe. This one has been banned for several reasons. I'm not going to tell you why yet because we're going to play a game to see if you can figure it out. If I Ran a Sue by Dr. Seuss. What? Dr. Seuss is surprisingly on the banned list a lot, apparently. A lot more than I realized he was.
That's not.
Captain Underpants, a whole series, has been pulled onto the banned list.
That is movie.
Okay, we can.
No.
A Wrinkle in Time, which is now a good movie that's out recently. It is a banned book as well. Has been before. I don't think it's banned all around, but it has been banned and challenged before.
That's nice.
Okay, well, thank you. Do you have any questions about, besides why these books are banned? Because we're going into a game now. We'll discuss that in a minute. Any questions?
Why do other parents have a say to what other children?
Well, see, that's the thing that we stand up for. We agree with you. I believe that, my 3 children, I have the right to control what they do, what they view, what they see, because that's how I'm raising them. But that's not my job for anybody else. My job for everybody else is to provide. And that is something some people just feel like they have the right to dictate what everybody does.
Why are the parents able to make it so the librarians have to?
Well, because they can threaten with lawsuits and they can threaten to bring in lawyers, and a lot of times it is easier to simply say, I won't put the book on the shelf rather than going through the system. And that is something that, if our school does have a good book challenge policy where we can say, well, look, these are why we've chosen this one, and with support, you can fight it, but sometimes it's easier just to say, okay, I'll take it off the shelf, because we try not to do that, though. We really, it has to be a big thing in order for them to play it.
I don't get something because they had Dr. Seuss up there. It's like one of the best children's books.
It's a long.
Yes.
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss is it still recording?
Yes.
Okay.
It's like an amazing book because when you read it, sometimes like with the cooking one, it'll take you into some funny stuff, except he found ways to rhyme and make up words, and he even created his own animals in that.
Yeah.
How is it making that?
How is it offensive?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out how that book in particular is. And there was a couple others in there that I put on the game that we're going to play. One more question, then we've got to get on to the game so we have time for it. Savannah?
So we talked about how intellectual censorship affects students and parents, but I was wondering how it affected teachers in classrooms.
Well, if I want to get a book that I think would be great for my classroom, and it's a banned book, I have to send permission slips home. And especially if this goes up into like the high school level where there are books that are banned and you have to get parental permission to read them. And so what I have to do is be aware of what they are so that I know, and before I can even send the permission slip home, I have to go to administration and explain why I want this book, why I think this book is valid merit, even though it's banned or censored or controversial in some way. And if your parent says, no, I don't want you reading that, then I have to either find an alternative assignment for you or change the entire assignment for the class so that we can continue on.
Do you think that if parents knew this whole process and this whole system, their opinion on this would be different?
Perhaps. It's hard to say. Some people I think are very hard to sway and some people are very hard to get them to change their mind, but we are trying to promote education, and that's why when they do come to us with a concern, we show them the intellectual freedom things, we show them why we've chosen the book, and any book that we put into the library, we know why we brought it into the library, and so we can use that to help and hopefully counteract some of it. So, all right, on your desks, you have an iPad, you're going to work in pairs, and how many of y'all have ever played Kahoot before? Awesome. So most people know how to play it. Those of you who aren't sure, go ahead and work with someone that does know so that we can do it. And I'm just going to put it as team mode, so you're going to have to make a team. Let the person who knows how to do it, please. Okay.
But I already have it.
All right.
No, it's just you and a partner.
You're going to have to add that pin number where it says game pin. If you need help, just raise your hand, and I'll be happy to come and help you.
6, 4, 7,
I was too.
I know.
And I picked some of those because I knew they would shock y'all.
6, 4, 7, 8, 4, 8, 4.
Okay, you can put H, that's fine. You can put one letter for your team name, it's not a huge deal.
No.
I'm not taking a grade, so I don't need to know who's who and which team is which team. The sooner we get into the game, the sooner we can play the game.
Alright, our thing's broken. That's not Megan.
The user error 36.
3617824.
I know.
Now it's just checking.
Okay, let's see, is this table in? Okay. What about you guys, are you in? Are you guys okay?
Oh, it's a
You're in?
Look.
Okay, what's the name?
Nickname.
I got it, come here.
I know, be kind. I have 2 people in. I have 2 teams. Come on, no, I need 3 more. I have 2 teams in.
I'm in.
Okay, so I have 2 teams in. I need 3 more.
Banana cat.
No, our team is in, but we're pot.
Okay.
Sam.
I don't think it types in everything.
Miss Palm, we're
No,
pot.
I don't think you did either. I got you.
I was trying to put knowledge.
All right. I got you. All right, y'all ready? Banana cat is ready. Maybe it's some of it's down. So
Yeah, there we go.
My name is Sam.
See how it says 4 teams?
14. How?
That's it.
Oh, no.
all right, so we are winning on 1 team.
We're waiting
It
on
says 4. For some reason, it's not showing all of them. I'm not sure why.
We're missing.
I have a
Okay,
question.
come on.
How come I can't put my name?
Mom.
You ready?
Yes, this is our team mascot.
All right.
It won't let me.
Oh, I
Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and start since we have all 5.
No, we
No, we don't.
What happened? You were in? Oh well, we started. Which book was banned because it focuses on magic? If I Ran a Zoo, the Harry Potter series, Captain Underpants series, or Entangle Makes 3. Which book was banned?
Everybody got this right.
Yes, we didn't say it.
It's okay. It's okay. All right. It was Harry Potter. Harry Potter has a lot of magical themes in there, and some parents thought that it would dissuade their children from what they were learning in church and things and counteract that, and they did not approve of it.
Wait, who's it for?
Hi. Clicked in first. Good job, Hi. Which book was challenged because it features a baby with 2 fathers? A Tango Makes 3, The Bridge to Terabithia, If I Ran a Zoo, or A Wrinkle in Time. Very good. That I kind of gave you that one earlier. It is A Tango Makes 3. It's about 2 little penguins that adopt a little baby penguin, but they both happen to be boys, and so people are not okay with that. Which book was banned partially because of the disrespect towards adults? A Wrinkle in Time, Entangle Makes 3, The Bridge to Terabithia, or If I Ran a Zoo. It's okay if you don't know. Take your best guess on it.
What? Oh, you listened.
What?
There were 2.
I don't think how sex to adult.
Raise your hand if you know.
They say that they are disrespectful to adults, and so they don't want their children to pick up the bad habit of being disrespectful. Let's finish the game, and then I'll get to the questions at the end, okay? Which book was banned due to being racially insensitive? The Harry Potter series, If I Ran a Zoo, A Wrinkle in Time, or Entangle Makes 3. That is one of the Dr. Seuss ones. If I Ran a Zoo was banned because some of the drawings in there are racially disrespectful and not appropriate. I think it has been redrawn and redesigned so now the newer versions don't have that, but the older versions were not the most.
Yay! Books of no.
Which book was banned for fear of going against religious beliefs? If I Ran a Zoo, the Captain Underpants series, the Harry Potter series, and A Wrinkle in Time. The Harry Potter series also, but for this question it was The Wrinkle in Time.
Wait, what?
Who's in first place? Yeah, what's the one?
Which book was banned because the character isn't appropriately dressed? Captain Underpants series, The Wrinkle in Time, the Harry Potter series, or If I Ran a Zoo.
I wonder what it might be.
It is the Underpants series. A lot of parents were upset because the character is running around in his underwear and they didn't feel that that was appropriate for their kids to see. Me, I just think it's a little odd. Which children's book was banned in America because talking animals were seen to be ungodly? Charlotte's Web, Little Red Riding Hood, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Grumpy Dog?
Oh,
Charlotte's Web.
Oh yeah, I know now.
All right, let's see. Good job. Which Dr. Seuss book was banned because it offended forestry workers, people who work in the forest industry? The Cat in the Hat, The Lorax, Horton Hears a Who, or Green Eggs and Ham? The Lorax has been a challenged book before because of its being disrespectful to forestry workers. The book was banned because it encourages children to spy, lie, and swear. Nancy Drew, the I Spy books, Harriet the Spy, or Spy School. It is Harriet the Spy. Harriet the Spy was challenged because it supposedly encourages children to spy, lie, and swear. Which book series? This book series was banned partially because the main character uses incorrect grammar. Harry Potter, Captain Underpants, the Humphrey series, or Junie B. Jones? It is Junie B. Jones. A lot of parents don't like the way Junie B. talks, and so they did not want their children picking up those bad habits, and they fought for it. All right, y'all did a great job.
Catfish. Cat and catfish.
There it goes.
Yay!
The Book of Knowles. Books of Knowles. All
Look at Knowles.
right. So what did you think about some of those books that were on the banned, censored, challenged list? Just how did you feel about that, Clayton?
it was outrageous.
Outrageous. I agree.
Because
Upset? Well, I'm sorry, Clayton. I didn't mean to cut you off. Why did you think it was outrageous?
how is it disrespectful about like the lumberjacks and that with the Lorax? Because is it like, because I don't get it. Because the kid, he shows up and he wants to get a seed, except his whole town is made like out of plastic. But he wants to make more trees.
Honestly, I think that people can find complaints about anything in any way, and I'm not entirely sure why all these books were banned. Like, I understand why, but I don't understand the logic behind the banning. Like, for me, I like the Lorax. I've never thought the Lorax was offensive in any sort of way, but did you have anything else to add, or were you done? Okay, Dakota, one more.
How is focusing on magic offensive? That's
Some
the whole,
people it goes
that's the
against,
whole point of wizardry. And
but it goes against some people's religious beliefs, and they don't believe in that. The Percy Jackson series is another series that bothers people because it talks about all the Roman and mythological gods, and people feel that it is confusing to their children.
you're gonna learn that in history anyways.
Well, then you can fight for library rights. Okay, so any other questions, Clayton?
So, with the Percy Jackson series, that's talking about Greek mythology and that. But then there's other books that I think I don't know, but I think there's books that are like with God and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So, how is that one of them, but
Honestly,
even though there's more books?
it
'cause-
becomes one person chose to complain and bring up a group of people to complain against it.
Well,
And
then
unfortunately, that's how it works. Thankfully, as you can tell with this library, those books are on the shelves and checked out quite frequently because when I come for them, they're never here. So obviously, this book, and this is where we are, we don't have, I don't think any of these books are probably banned from here. All of these books are available, and some of these books have been banned for a long time, but are unbanned or were challenged and are no longer being challenged. Some continue to be challenged constantly. It just sort of depends on the tide.
Do you know if there's anything like going against the Warrior Cat books?
I do not know, but I can look and let you know because I can see what you're saying with some of these being banned for speaking animals and stuff like that. I can see exactly what you're saying. I'll look into it and let you know.
Charlotte's Web and the speaking animals, it has that, but yet some of the Dr. Seuss books.
Well, he's been banned too, so I don't know if Dr. Seuss is a great one to compare it with.
Some of the books
There's a lot of books that have talking animals. And I think the key is it's fiction, and some of us realize it's fiction, but some people, it bothers, and it is, we have to battle. It's something we combat all the time. And this is what we fight for, is your intellectual freedom. We fight for your right to be able to read these things and see these things and say, okay, yeah, your mom doesn't want you to read this because of her beliefs and whatnot, and that's your mom's right. But that's not my job. My job is to make sure that you have access to it. And that is what the intellectual freedom means. Okay. I think we're almost out of time, love. Last
With
question.
the thing where it has the talking animals, I don't think they took this into account, but people are mammals, so that makes us animals as well, and we talk.
I need you on the committee with him to
Yeah.
help us, okay?
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. Humans are technically animals, and a lot of people refuse to admit that. So you are completely correct. So you want to stop the video for me?
Which is like,
You're absolutely, that's a valid point. Animals are
we talk